Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another exciting virtual tour. I'm your host and guide this evening, Chris Staudinger. And welcome to perhaps one of the most, if not exciting, intriguing virtual tours that we've ever got to do, Salmon Beach. This is I think everyone always uses the phrase, whatever's best kept secret. I really feel that in the neighborhoods of Tacoma, this is truly the best kept secret. If there's a better kept one, it's got to be Ironclad, and I haven't even heard of it. So we're gonna give this one the title for now. General housekeeping, as we always like to do. A brief reminder that this tour, as well as all of our virtual tours, is completely free. Tonight's virtual tour of Salmon Beach comes to you from the City of Tacoma. If anyone asks you to sign up for an account or contribute to your viewership fees, just ban them, mark them as spam. We will never ask for your money. This is a free experience for you guys. So huge round of applause for the City of Tacoma for bringing this all together. And also, I want to give a shout out to the National Alliance of Preservation Communities. Their Forum 2020 was supposed to be taking place in Tacoma this year, but unfortunately, something, I don't know what, went wrong, and they will not be joining us in person. But they have had the opportunity to experience Tacoma virtually. So hopefully they're with us tonight as we get to explore this historically preserved community of Salmon Beach. So I think that's the important stuff. Normal reminders, if you guys want to ask questions or contribute to the story, a huge part of what we do is give people an opportunity to connect their narratives with other people. So if you are from the Salmon Beach area or you have stories you want to share and you want to put those in the comments, please do. I'm by no means the definitive authority on Salmon Beach. I am just the vessel that allows you to embark into these uncharted waters tonight, which I guess is a good reminder that if you do enjoy your tour, you do have the opportunity to tip your guide at prettygrittytours.com. Again, not necessary. Your tour has been paid for, so enjoy the ride. Well, let's see. We want to just feel the room really quick and see if anyone is from the NAPC tonight. If you are, jump on, make yourselves known. We're happy to have you here. For everyone else, I'm also happy that you guys are here. Salmon Beach is a cool place, and I'm excited to get to show you guys more about it. But I guess we should start with the basics, right? Meaning, where the heck is Salmon Beach? I'm so glad you asked, everyone. Let's take a little flight, shall we? Let's see if I can bring in the command deck here. So Salmon Beach, if you're looking at Tacoma, I'll try and orient the map. So this is how you'd normally look at the map, north-south. Salmon Beach is on the west coast of the peninsula of Tacoma, and it's just south of Point Defiance Park. And we're going to fly in here, and you can start to see clutching precariously at the bottom of a 200-foot cliff, smashed right up against the raging waters of the Narrows, is Salmon Beach. And it is this collection of beach shacks, shanties, and eclectic little wilderness homes clinging to the cliff out here. And it ends precisely right there where the train tunnel is. And in case you're curious, there is only two ways to get down to Salmon Beach. One is a set of stairs. The other is by boat. And those are kind of what you're dealing with when you're talking about how to get in and out. But don't worry, I'll get you guys all into that in a second here. But I think to really get the flavor of Salmon Beach, it's important to know what the heck we're even talking about. And luckily, we've got the best way to see Salmon Beach is really from the water. And so we've got aquatic aerial footage for you guys tonight so that you can see Salmon Beach from the waterfront side. Because if you're behind Salmon Beach, it can be much more difficult to visualize, but greater to experience. And don't you worry, we've got you covered on both fronts. But this is Salmon Beach from the water. This is probably 100 feet out on the water right now, looking at the communities out there. And it is currently just over 100 cabins. It averages about 80. I think 111, 114 was the maximum ever out there, historically speaking. Yes. Depending on the tide, Salmon Beach is two very different communities. And in fact, when you're accessing Salmon Beach, the entirety of that community is woven together by a single boardwalk that kind of threads in between the homes and the cliff. And I've got a clip from Zigzagger's Instagram, which shows what it's like to walk around there during high tide. And I think it gives you a real flavor for what it's like to be caught there. And this isn't even aggressive. This is just high tide. Like, can you imagine a swell tide in the winter with a storm? This community would be damp, let's say. So if you guys are ready, why don't we talk about the history of this place? There we go. Oh, hey, and just want to give everyone a moment. Todd Scott, glad you're with us tonight. All right, let's bring you guys in to Salmon Beach. So Salmon Beach, the story really begins with the Faust family. I think you can take several different tacks, if you will, on this whole thing. But for me, I think the Faust family are the people that really give Salmon Beach the heart and soul that it has today. If you're not familiar with the Faust family, we'll do a quick refresher. Thea Foss and her husband, Andrew Foss, immigrated from Norway to the Midwest. Andrew was a carpenter and a shipwright and a lumberjack, always working with different types of woods. And Thea was an American badass. Eventually, what happened is Andrew came to America first, and he was like, all right, Thea, come on over. Here's some money. And he went to the port to pick her up, and it was his sibling. He's like, what the heck are you doing here? And they were like, oh, well, Thea took the money that you gave me and bought my ticket. And he's like, okay, well, welcome to America. So he tried it again. And every time she just sent a different family member over. And she was like, absolutely not. I will not go to America until I buy my own ticket. She did. They made things work in the Midwest until Andrew got a job over in Tacoma. She took their 2-year-old, their 4-year-old, and their infant daughter by herself in an immigrant boxcar, so I think 6 days across the country, showed up, and then immediately started working in Tacoma. And she's the fame and the fortune, I think, for the family, because famously she took her modest earnings, bought a rowboat, would ferry people back and forth from one side of Tacoma to the other through the now Foss Waterway, turned that into a fleet of rowboats, to a fleet of steam tugs, to the largest maritime industry in the state. And she is awesome. That's basically your quick recap right there. When they first had their enterprise set up, they were right downtown in the middle of the waterway. This is their boathouse that you can see right down on the waterfront there. And it was just a single, just like a single box for a period of time. They added the second level and then started to operate their boat rental company out of the bottom down there. And you can see it's nestled right underneath the Tacoma Hotel. But as charming and quaint as the Foss Boathouse was, it was subject to the same problems that all of downtown Tacoma was experiencing, which was rapid expansion, which is good for business, but not necessarily if you're raising a family of like 5 kids and they're all running around. So they looked for a retreat. And if I could go back to the map here really quick, when you're looking at Tacoma, it was just spilling out of the waterway here and rapidly expanding along the rail line all the way up the coast here into the Ruston area where the smelting plant was. And Point Defiance was already off limits for people to do any sort of camping or development. So if people were looking for a retreat, they would brave the waters all the way around the point here, and then end up in the Salmon Beach area. And that's exactly what the Foss family did. As their business expanded, they took the money and they bought a bigger home, bigger offices, even a landlocked home at one point. And then the original boathouse was just left. And they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't want to sink it. They didn't want to burn it. It was still sentimental. So they had their youngest son, Henry, hook it up to one of their tugboats, tow it around Point Defiance, and park it at Salmon Beach. And at that point, there were already some people set up there. Like Salmon Beach started as a collection of just like tents or like beach shacks. So in 1903, I think the most well-documented of the early shanties was already there, Camp Alder. And that's important too. Most of these places on Salmon Beach are called Camp Alder, Camp Flapjack, Camp Stick It In, INN. These people are hilarious. But Foss shows up and they set up not only the boathouse, but a secondary location as well, which becomes a general store. And that is the beginning of this as a legitimate community. Because as these people would come out and like do weekend fishing or just camp out there during the summer, they could rent boats. They could, really experience the waterfront without taking a bunch of their own equipment. So Foss continued to make money out in the area and really helped give a sense of legitimacy and permanency to this as a community. And it was in the very early days, in the early 1900s, a collection of people who lived and died on the water, longshoremen, professional fishermen, people that were always bound to the coast. So this was something very easy for them. And it was a rich resource too, because as the name might have clued you off, Salmon Beach was an excellent location for catching salmon. It was not uncommon for them to be anywhere from 3 to 4 feet and require 2 full-grown men to lift them out. And so they would be selling them by the pound for extra money down there as well. And it became just the spot to be. As time went on, the Foss boathouse disappeared. No record of it, no trace of it is still around right now. The last photographs that I've ever seen came from Michael Sullivan, and these are some of the last photos of the Foss family and their enterprise down on Salmon Beach. This is from 1915. Well, one of the great things about the Foss family, too, is that not only did they have this maritime industry, but they made their own boats. They didn't just rent them. Andrew, as a shipwright, not only created their own boats, but invented new shapes to these boats and tugboats as well. And in fact, one of my favorite stories about him is that he refused to patent them. He felt very strongly that if he were to design a safer, more efficient form for a seagoing vessel, that should be available for shipwrights around the world so that people wouldn't die at sea. Good people. They branded all of their boats with their house sigil, the Salmon. So all these are in the Foss Waterway Seaport today with the Salmon Beach Boathouse Foss Salmon branded into them. And these are original. These are early 1900 boats that they have on display down there right now. The name Salmon Beach, though, is officially coined by our friend Charlie Ziegler, who takes the secondary Foss boat storage building and turns it into the general store and grocer. And he calls it the Salmon Beach store. And from there on out, people are like, there you go. That's the name of our community now. So this is the story, I think. 1937 is when you see a major transition, but I don't want to get ahead of you guys. So when it starts out, it's just people essentially salvaging material that they find on the shore, logs that have washed up, things that have fallen down, and they turn it into their homes. But not everyone's on board with this plan. And the official owner of the tide flats underneath is Mr. John Sebastian Baker. And it really depends on whose book you read as to what kind of guy Mr. Baker was. I think this is a good opportunity to credit the font of so much of this research and wisdom. Mr. Roger Edwards, who wrote the Tacoma Salmon Beach Images of America book. He's written, I believe, several books about the Salmon Beach area. He's a Salmon Beach resident. He's part of the Salmon Beach Improvement Club, Historic Society. If you know Salmon Beach, you know Roger. And when you read through his material, there's not really a lot good about Mr. Baker, and it's hard to read in between the gaps with this stuff, but I'm going to do my best for you guys. John Baker buys the tide flats. He is an aggressive businessman who owns mines, waterfront, real estate development, puts a lot of time and infrastructure into making money in Tacoma, and he wants everyone off the tide flats so that he can develop it. Henry Foss is the official owner of quite a bit of that area, as well as a lot of the structures. And he refuses to sell the leased agreements to Baker in 1937, after his father, Andrew Foss, passes away. And so they get locked in this sort of contentious, nebulous battle as to who really owns the area and what can anybody do about it. And the Baker family never gets claim of the area. And so it just is allowed for people to keep living there. And the other thing that changes at this time is it moves sort of from a collection of just summer homes right before World War I to more serious family establishments, people living there full time. And the thing that kicks that off is the Great Depression. Since they had summer homes out there, modest though they were, it became a place where a lot of people started raising their family full time. And so this is the beginning of the Salmon Beach neighborhood as a full-time community. And yeah, this, like I said, I don't want to judge anyone's character. I'm not going to say anything bad about Baker. I'm not going to say anything bad about Foss. I'm personally a huge fan of everything the Foss family did. And there's quite a bit of good stuff written about Mr. Baker. I guess I will leave it at that. When you're looking at the Salmon Beach community, I think it's going to be more helpful for you guys really quick to look at them in numbered zones. So tmap.cityoftacoma.org is an amazing resource for all you history lovers out there who are trying to look at something and get to know the area better. This allows us to look at the cabins as they're numbered. So at the very northernmost end, you can see number 1, and then you can follow them all the way down till we get to the bottom of the section here, which should be number 104. And you'll notice the 90s is a good example. If cabins have been destroyed or removed over time, they'll leave those empty spaces there as plots unnumbered. So for example, between 92 and 95, there's nothing available there right now, but that would be, 90, 93, and 94. And while they had camp names pretty early on, once they started getting mail delivered down there, they were like, it's going to be just way easier if we number them all the way down. So they started north and continued on down through the area. The thing that really caps the Salmon Beach area, which I want you to see here in a second, is Point Defiance Park on the north, and then the rail line essentially on the south. But I'll show you that in a second. This is a good example here. This is cabin 56 through 58, or the spot where they are today. This was one of the first navigational aids that the Salmon Beach area decided to add. And it's just an enormous boulder deposited from the glacial age that they whitewashed. And so today, when you fly back into the area, actually we can go here. If you go back to the 50, 55, 56 area, underneath these cabins today is that enormous rock. Because not only is it difficult to get stuff into the Salmon Beach area, it is disproportionately difficult to get stuff out of there. This is an example of how that process has to be done. So I believe this is 1949. The McDonald family, to get their home into the area, had to put it on a barge and then float it in with all the materials that they needed to construct it, and then any machinery that they needed to move it from there. So you can see that the transport truck is on the barge as well, and they would have just steamed this out, wait for high tide, slide that sucker on shore, and hey presto, you now live on Salmon Beach. Amber, are you meaning the signal stone, or are you meaning this house right here? Because either way, that's amazing. And I wouldn't put it past Salmon Beach at all. When you look through the document for the historic preservation of the area, you can go through all of the cabins as they've been written up. And in the prelude to the whole thing, what I love about it is normally you read through these historic preservation documents when they're looking to get a place on the register. And it's like, these are all the materials that make it true and historic and accurate. For Salmon Beach, they're like, well, from the dawn of time, people have used whatever they could find just to patch up any hole that might arise as the sea, the wind, and the landslides rip these places apart. And that's what makes it historically accurate. If it is a ramshackle collection of salvaged materials, then it's true to the area. So it's unique in its nomination for historic preservation, but magical. To get to Salmon Beach is the real hardship, and is part of the reason that very few people know it exists in Tacoma. It is technically private property. I've found that the Salmon Beach community is very welcoming to people, but doesn't want strangers just wandering around because it's their homes. And as you may have seen already, it's very intimate and tightly interwoven. So you don't have like a lot of like yard space, for example, unless you consider the ocean your yard. So it is a gated community. There are warning signs everywhere. And it is a level of danger that not everyone experiences. But as you enter it, there's just this like graveyard of boat launch trailers from people that have put into sea and have never looked back. And then begins the descent. I want you guys to experience this as I experienced it the best that you can. It's 200 feet approximately of cliff down from the parking lot down to Salmon Beach. And I had to go up and down them like 8 times to get all the different footage for this tour. I'm going to see if I can get my camera ready for you guys here so you can see that stair experience. Here we go. Welcome to the Salmon Beach stairs. So this is it, guys. Like, if you're gonna go to and from your house to your car, this is your option. You can take a boat out there on the Narrows. Almost every home I saw had a kayak or a boat tied up in some way. But if you're gonna go out via the land route, this is what it's gonna look like for you. I want to see the comments on this one. I appreciate you guys bringing it up. Don't you worry. So it's important that you guys get to experience the steps right now to understand the cliff, because it's important to everything else in the area. It's obviously grueling, but the view is worth it. You can see that they're perched right there looking out on the Narrows. So yeah, we're already getting questions about landslides. So don't you worry, I got you guys covered. I can find my right. Here we go. So let's take you guys back. This is Salmon Beach down on the waterfront as you're going through that boardwalk area, looking at all the different patchwork homes. And this is on the very south end, looking back north up. So I'll take you guys back to cabin 92 here really quick. But where's my, here we go. Landslides. So in 1919, the first really big landslide affects the area. I'll try to make this a little bigger so you guys can read it. And it just swept straight down the cliff there, took a bunch of mud and trees with it, and then unfortunately 14 cabins, and just ripped them right off and deposited them down into the water. Some of them were able to be salvaged. A lot of them were irreparably destroyed. And this, coupled at the same time as the Volstead Act was rolling out on a national level, and it literally and figuratively changed the landscape of Salmon Beach, because it turned it into sort of a more a shanty town. Remember, we were talking about Baker didn't want people to be there. And so he really used this as an opportunity to try and evict everyone from the area. So people that were considering living there full time left the area because the ownership of their homes became dubious at that point. And it became a place that was more populated by people who were using the opportunity to start creating hooch. And one of the things that made it so perfect, other than the fact that it's almost impossible to access via the land side, is that you could escape almost effortlessly on the water. So if you thought the cops were coming, you just jump on your boat and you disappear. Also, though, the entire area has freshwater springs. So when you're looking at that 200-foot clay cliff at the back of those shacks, there are springs that flow through and then down. High spirits down there. What that ends up turning into is this collection of people who are making a living down there until the Great Depression of the 1930s. Now it becomes a place where people are moving their families back in because they had their moonshining cabins down there all set up as affordable places as they could live. So it went from the first landslide in 1919, turning it into a place where not a lot of families lived, to the second landslide in 1949. And this was the more pivotal of the two, because as you know, the largest earthquake ever in the area was in April of 1949. It was devastating throughout the state, and this was no exception. I mean, the damage was, you can't overstate it. And it was used again as another opportunity to try and evict the people that were living on Salmon Beach. And this is what really began the organized effort to turn this into a community. So I'll get there in a second. I want to show you two things before we do, though. Cabin 92 is one of the ones that I have a lot of good content of here so that you can see what it was like. Oh, sorry about that, guys. I'll take you back here. I was saying the well that you were looking at there is part of a system of fresh water that flows from springs through the cliff and then down to the Salmon Beach area. And that was collected in these freshwater wells down there at the bottom during the 1920s, during Prohibition. And after the landslide of 1919, a lot of families left the area because they didn't know if they were going to own their home because the Baker family was trying to evict everyone. Moonshiners really took over the area, and they were creating blackberry mash, whiskey, homemade wine, all these spirits, and then smuggling them right off of the waterfront there. And they were using those freshwater wells down there to do it. This continued until the Great Depression, and then in the 1930s, families started to move back in because they had these moonshining cabins down there already set up, and people were losing their homes elsewhere. So it became a place that people would move their families in, and it began as a family community once more. So let me know if I missed anything on that one for you guys. Looking at cabin 92, just because I've got good visuals of it here, you can see the sort of like eclectic style that is signature to Salmon Beach. And I love this one because it represents, for me, I think, the sort of artistic, free-spirited community that is most famous in the Salmon Beach area. The other thing, before I get into the landslide of 1949, is to sort of visualize why the area hasn't expanded more. In the 1930s, people really wanted to develop it more, to bring their families down there, create more cabins. But by 1910, the railroad had made plans to cut the whole thing off. And so again, when you're looking at the map of it here, the northern end, this is Point Defiance Park right here. Like, you can't go farther north without getting in trouble from the park. And if you're going south, you'll notice right here, after the last cabin, there's a gap, and then the train comes out right here. So for all of you who've wondered, as you're in Tacoma and the train barrels up Ruston Way and then just vanishes, where does it go? Well, now you know. It goes through this bad boy right here. This is the Nelson Bennett Tunnel. And if any of you have been following along on our virtual tours, yes, Nelson Bennett is the same guy who engineered the Stampede Pass Tunnel, the first passageway through the Cascades, connecting the railway from East and West Coast. And he designs this much smaller project here in Tacoma so that the train, if you can see here, it comes through the tide flats. It stops right here on the Foss Waterway so that it can pick up goods. It would come up the Prairie Line Spur Trail into downtown Tacoma. It picks up grain on the waterfront, either at the Balfour docks or the grain silos, depending on your history. Comes up here, and then instead of going around Point Defiance Park, it goes through the Nelson Bennett Tunnel and then exits just south of Salmon Beach here. And it still exists out there today, but it's the reason that not anything has expanded past that point. As you're looking at the cabins that managed to get on there before they got capped, and you look at the nomination for historic preservation, everything is divided into essentially things that were more or less unaltered over 50 years or things that were more or less unaltered over 35 years. And that form was submitted in 1976 the first time. So you were looking, from the early 1900s at that. Also, just a quick shout out to Devilfish Pete. He is one of the most prolific and just entrepreneurial bootleggers at the time. He had a very large family and he had a lot of sway in the area. He was a man who extended his reach. But again, it depends which storybook you read. For bootlegging, he was top tier, but he also got the name Devilfish Pete because he was an excellent cook. And so this picture here represents one of the enormous octopeople, one of the cephalopods pulled out of the ocean from the Narrows here, which was very popular at the area. And he created the most magnificent Greek salads with these octopi. The octopus fishing industry was actually very popular. It wasn't just salmon that they were pulling out at Salmon Beach, but a lot of people would go out and try and snag an octopus as well, because they were very popular with both the Greek immigrants and the Japanese immigrants in the area. And so you could get a really good price just on like a weekend fishing trip for your extra octa friends. Earthquake of 1949 changes everything, and this is when the Salmon Beach Improvement Club shows up. One of the big things that Henry Foss ends up doing in the 1960s was to ensure that the people that were living there could continue living there. And the big way that that was able to happen was through the involvement of the Salmon Beach Improvement Club. And they were incorporated in the 1950s, and they started managing the leases of these individual properties. And while the development of the land was always sort of nebulous, and the Foss family still maintained the majority of that area there, the Salmon Beach Improvement Club was responsible for ensuring the safety and preservation of the community and making sure that it was always up to code. So they were on top of it from the 1950s to today. In the 1960s, Henry Foss ends up contributing a large portion of money to Metro Parks and the City of Tacoma so that they can purchase the land officially and then give management over to the Salmon Beach Improvement Club, and then everything gets put on electricity and sewer and brought up to city code. So phenomenally enough, every home on Salmon Beach is on city sewer. There are no septic tanks down there, even though the first homes just had holes that emptied straight into the ocean. Whew. I think that brings us up to speed. Now I'm just going to put up a series of these emojis of those 8-legged fish. Why can't I have no idea what the plural of octopus is? I'm sorry I failed you guys as a tour guide tonight. Cabin 79 is one of the ones that we have this historic, beautiful picture of. And one of the things that really set the community up for success, both to be incorporated officially into the city and to be put on the historic register, was a photographer who spent her time down there. And the photos that she captured of life on Salmon Beach really were important to swaying the city at large to understanding why this place was important. So cabins 53 through 60 here. This is on the boardwalk headed south. And then this is another photo from 1976, just showing the community as it was. And it's pretty wild. Like, if we can go back down here, you can see it's in so many ways unchanged. Even though it continues to adapt, it's really maintained its vibe from the very beginning. So this is today. These are cabins 53, 60, essentially. And this is down here on the end again, the very southern portion of Salmon Beach, moving up north. And this is just the other angle. So you can see they've always had an incredible view of the Narrows Bridge, at least ever since it was built, and then again rebuilt. I'm gonna make sure everyone can still hear. So yeah. Oh, thanks, Todd. Octopi. Now we can all say we've officially learned something tonight. And yeah, in case you don't know, the new official name of Seattle's professional soccer team is the Kraken. Whew. It's just an exciting time to be alive. I just love this photo because one of the things that I lament as a person who lives in Tacoma, and particularly a tour guide, is that I feel like the relationship with the water in Tacoma isn't as strong as it could be. And I know the Puget Sound is freezing, like averages 45 to 50 degrees, whatever, but it's the ocean and we live so close to it, and we should really be taking the opportunity to engage with it more. And what I love about the Salmon Beach photos is that people are just in it all the time. And it was colder back then. So here's a shout out to the pioneers of Salmon Beach for making sure that everything was staying well used. I am going to tell you guys about Chloe the Mermaid. But before I do, I want to give you a quick walkthrough of the area. I've got video footage that goes from cabin 1 down and allows you to see what it looks like when you get to the bottom of the stairs and you get to walk through that community, because it's something that very few people have got to experience. And I really think it's something you should get to see. Here we go. Wait, I don't know if I've got the right one up. Here we go. And hopefully you can all see. Yeah, I found a very warm welcome while I was down there. So that was cabin 1, and we're currently meandering down, and off we go down on the boardwalk. So again, these sand pits down here are going to be full of water at high tide. It's not uncommon to see every home with a kayak, a stand-up paddleboard, a motorboat, you know, like I just said, the connection to the waterfront is inescapable if you live at Salmon Beach, and you find that these people are very in tune with that connection. And like, you're right on the waterfront, so why wouldn't you take advantage of it? The charm of the boardwalk, though, speaks for itself. You can smell the cedar, the madrona up on the cliffside there, the salt air coming through, and it just has this otherworldly vibe as you're going through this really narrow corridor that just snakes behind each of these cabins, and each one has a vibrant personality. I feel like you can feel the history of it and the aura of the person who lives there today emanating through the art, the decor, and what they've chosen to incorporate in their area. And it's not uncommon to see a lot of gardens too. Chicken coops, little gardens carved out of the cliff on the side there and beyond. And people have really utilized their space to the best of their ability. And it is not much space to utilize. So you got to have some sort of pioneering engineering background to really make it work down there. And again, this is at the very end. So we are now moving from the most southern end northwards through Salmon Beach. And it's a long ways of this. I'm not going to subject you guys to the full recording of it. But you can see from that earlier video, this was all high tide and the water was crashing over this boardwalk here. But the tide was quite a ways out as I was going through. Intentionally planned. So let's take you guys back in really quick because I got some more I want to show you in the area, particularly of Chloe the Mermaid. And Chloe the Mermaid is a fixture in the area that is so iconic for the Salmon Beach area. And she is, I think, an official member of the Salmon Beach Improvement Club, certainly of the Historic Society. And I'd like for you guys to get to meet her tonight. She is a bronze mermaid down here from 1995. And Marilyn Mahoney is our artist. I think I've got a picture of her here in a second. That's Chloe, not Marilyn. But Chloe is modeled after Marilyn's daughters. She used them as her muses for creating her. And this was a passion project beautification moment where there is a gap in between the, what are the words I'm looking for? A gap in between the cabins down here. So the mermaid is installed down there. I think, oh boy, there she is, right in between the cabins down here. So kind of, if you're looking at the map, there's essentially 3 access points. You can come down the switchback stairs here. You can come down the sloping area here from this parking lot, or on the other side, where the mailbox is and the more developed parking lot is, there's a staircase that comes down in this area as well. So right in between the two, you can find Chloe right down here in a gap where there used to be a cabin, but is no longer today. And I'm actually not certain which number that was. This is a really good question. How do the residents dispose of garbage? How do the residents do anything? Well, if you're gonna dispose of your garbage, you got to take it up the stairs to the dumpsters at the top. There's a trash collection and postal service that comes down into the main parking lots there where the variety of garages are all assembled. If you're going to go grocery shopping, you're going to have to huff those down yourself or pay someone to do it. If you're going to deliver a child, you're going to want to get really good at steps, I guess, which I hear helps, honestly. I know my wife did a lot of steps before she delivered our 2 children, and I don't think this is anywhere near the number that she was looking forward to. So, yeah, the people that live on Salmon Beach are a different breed. Like, you got to be committed to the serene beauty and the first distance learning in the area, because they're out there and there's no easy way. Like, you can take a boat to your area, but if it's low tide, you still have to wait for the tide to come in before you can get right up to your home. And if you're gonna go in and out, take those stairs. I've never seen someone who didn't look like they were in the best shape of their life living at Salmon Beach. This particular cabin gets the most honorable mention tonight, though. This is cabin number 97. And of all the cabins down there, 97 is the only one, when they nominated everything for historic preservation, that is mostly original. Here's the historic plaque. It won. This is the cabin. I'm trying to remember the exact date on this. Someone will actually know the right answer to this, but the gentleman who purchased this cabin got it in this condition, I think in the 1950s, and then maintained it. I don't even want to say refurbished it, but restored it, brought it back to its historic level while making it a livable place. And it's only like a 14 by 16 foot place. It's designed for a bachelor, and I believe it was purchased by a bachelor. It's not a family home by any means. And so you can see the condition that it was originally purchased in, and then it's been, I've gone too far here, returned back to that luster down there. So 97 is the only one down there that is the majority of its original materials and is more or less unaltered from the first cabin that was established in the early 1900s. And it's survived quite a lot because obviously landslides, large waves, evictions. There have been a series of fires. I think there was one moonshining still explosion. A lot has happened down there. Just to mention those, not even like just the general wear and tear of being right on the ocean. To have survived this long is a testament. I also just love this because somebody's doghouse goes out over the tide flats there. Salmon Beach is just the greatest place, guys. If you have the opportunity to have someone invite you down there, please take it. It's just a magical location full of whimsy and joy and pure nature. But it is a private place, so please make sure you're invited down. One of the things that you get to see down there is this rowboat down there, and I believe this is an original from 1935. I'm trying to see if I've got a wider shot of it down there, and it's very much the kind of rowboat that you would have seen rented by the Foss Company down there, or just privately owned by any of the families. Because again, the original families down there, and some that still live there, were majority fishers and dock workers and people that were tied to the water. So they were very comfortable out there and spent a lot of time on the water anyhow. Very good question. It really depends. And to give you some context for that, let's just take a look down on the shore again. Because you're dealing with places like this modest little cabin right here, to fantasy palaces like our one on the very end here, which, as you can see, has just a wide variety of additions. So, you know, it wouldn't be uncommon to see a huge fluctuation in prices down there. And that's just an impossible question to answer. Unless some have a pretty good answer on that, I don't know really how to answer it for you. And yeah, not every home down here is original to the area. Obviously, we discussed the fact that like a lot has changed over the years, but also some people have actually floated in other homes over time. The majority of these have been pieced together from available materials, but a lot of them, or not a lot, but a handful of them have actually been disassembled piece by piece, floated up on a barge, and then installed in the area when there was an availability. And they all have some access to either a garden in the back or one of these freshwater springs here in the background. And it's difficult. This is one of the water sources that people had to use originally because you can't dig a well there. There were some wells that were dug, but you can only go so far down before you hit briny saltwater, and then the whole thing is scuttled. While we're looking at those springs, though, I just also love this photo and I wanted to share it with you guys. These are original moonshiners down there on the beach, and they're feeding this salmon some of their moonshine right there, just as a toast to its glory days. So when we're looking at Salmon Beach, and again, this picture was taken in 1976, but I don't think it looks too strikingly different from the community that you see today. I'll take you guys back here really quick to, if I can find it. I want you guys to be able to see, here we go. The Salmon Beach from the shore again. Because while so much has changed, a lot also hasn't. They still host their annual canoe kayak race from the southern end of Salmon Beach up to cabin number 1 there, where the woman Joan is still responsible for hosting the celebration. It has maintained that energy of just being a retreat from the world. And like I said, if you have the opportunity to go out there, it's worth taking the opportunity. And yes, Lauren is correct. Now that it is historically preserved, to the best of my knowledge, the area, you can't do any new development out there. So what you're looking at is what you've got. I know that they can refurbish quite a few of those that are out there, sell them, pass them on. But as far as new development in the area, it's not going to happen because the beach is now protected, and it is still capped the way it always was on the north end by Point Defiance and on the south end by that train tunnel and rail line. And neither of those are going anywhere. And you're certainly not going to convince either of those titans of industry or preservation to move over so you can build your duplex. I'll take you guys back here really quick. So in parting, I'll give you guys this one right here. So if you guys have more questions about this, feel free to ask them. I'm going to put up a bunch of extra stuff online afterwards and give you guys an opportunity. But one of my favorite things is just to see the storytelling and the sharing go on about this. I want people to have the opportunity to share their contributions if they lived in the Salmon Beach area or beyond. But I think this was an opportunity for those who didn't know about the area to get their first taste of it. And hopefully we have the opportunity to dive in a little bit deeper, if you can excuse another nautical pun, to really let people know about the area. Again, I want to thank the City of Tacoma for organizing the entirety of this thing right now, the National Alliance of Preservation Communities for giving us an opportunity to come out and explore something, and of course Roger Edwards for his vast contributions to the written preservation of the Salmon Beach community. So thank you guys for coming out tonight. If you guys did appreciate tonight, you can tip your guide at prettygrittytours.com. Always appreciated, never necessary, but you're allowing us to continue to do these virtual experiences throughout the city and beyond. Make sure you check our calendar. We've got quite a few exciting tours coming up, and we have some very exciting ones for the City of Tacoma. We are going to do our first virtual kayak tour along the coast of the City of Tacoma, and we'll see how ambitious I get in my 16-foot sail kayak. The goal is to go from the end of the Foss Waterway to Titlow. We'll see what happens. You know, I am a licensed captain, and I'm also a father of 2. All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you all spending another evening with us as we get out and see another place in the Grand South Sound region. If you guys have any recommendations for our next stuff, leave them on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. I'm always game for more. Until then, I'm Chris Steininger. Keep on exploring.